because this is a Unite Classic. We've actually run this type of session at every single Unite. It's the constant. So this panel is about the future of internal comms. So to help understand the future of internal comms, I've called on some friends. Please welcome to the stage Jason, Laura, and Paddy. Jason's got his Diet Coke ready. So I've got some extra special questions prepared for you. But before we go into them, we've got quite a diverse panel here with different experiences, different mindsets. So let's introduce them to you. Laura, I'm going to start with you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, who you work for, and your career history in comms.
Absolutely. Hello, I am Laura Kennedy. I am the Director of Team Member Communications for Lifetime. Some people know us as Lifetime Fitness, maybe, but we are much more than that these days. So we operate 185 athletic country clubs in the US and Canada, and we are all about empowering everyone to live a healthy, happy life, whether you're 90 days or 90 years old.
Oh, OK. Love it. And Paddy, let's come to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm trying to learn all the lessons from today, so waving. Yeah, we're joking about what we're going to do with our hands. So my name is Patty Latore. I'm the head of partnerships at ScreenCloud. So ScreenCloud is Unilever's digital signage partner. So we integrate with the platform and enable users to use their news posts and put them on screens. Purpose-built for internal communications use cases, 10,000 customers globally. And kind of our North Star is that we want to see digital signage not just be another channel, but actually be one of the main channels that you guys are using for your internal communications.
Thanks, Paddy. And Jason.
Hey, Jason Anthoine. I am managing director of a consultancy called Arketi Inside. We help companies inform, involve, and inspire their employees. And I would like to say that I'm glad to finally be at a conference where I don't have the most unusual accent.
Excellent. And a bit about your career history as well, because I know you've got some...
Yeah. So 37 years, I know it's shocking, 37 years in corporate communications, primarily internal communications, half that on the corporate side with GE and Siemens and Newell Brands, consumer products company, the other half agency and consulting.
Excellent. Right, let's get straight into it. So the theme of the conference this year is exceeding the pace of change. And internal communications has had a bit of a change in what we do and what we deliver, at least in some organizations. Jason, I might start with you, actually. What are some of the big shifts in internal comms at the moment that you're feeling?
I think a lot of it revolves around just really understanding who employees are and what they want. I think a lot of times decisions get made about what we want or what leaders want without even really asking our employees maybe what they want. So I think now that we have all kinds of platforms and ways to get feedback, including, of course, face-to-face, I think that's a huge opportunity to make things feel a lot more personalized and human at a time when everything is now sort of feeling digital.
Absolutely. And Paddy, I'll come to you next.
Yeah, like the last 2 days, speaking to a lot of you, what's really impressed me, or maybe not, but it's really hearing how much for you guys the workload has increased. And then just hearing about, I don't know if there's any other group within a large company that's really over the last decades had so many more responsibilities, so many more changes in what you're doing and how you're doing it. And so that's just been one of like my key takeaways, and then really impressive at the same time. Bit scary to hear about it as well. So like how you manage that, how you deal with it, it's I think one of the big topics for me.
Nice. And Laura, what are some of the big shifts you're seeing?
Yeah, so Jason touched on personalization, and that used to be a nice to have. And I think with employees nowadays, absolutely a need to have. There is shorter attention spans than ever. I am thinking now, I heard, that it's shorter than a goldfish, so 8 seconds is what you have to captivate somebody's attention, which is nothing, and maybe 100 words or so. So employees are not only looking for personalized messages that are targeted to them and their role, but they're also looking for communicators and for their leaders to connect the dots for them on how a big company initiative or a message is relevant to them, why they should care, and what is needed from them to operationalize it. So us doing the brain work on that nowadays is more important than ever.
Okay, and so on the topic of change specifically, change communication used to at least be a separate function. I'm sure there are some people in attendance that have changed communication in their role versus internal communication. It sometimes used to be seen as a slightly different thing. Has change communications become BAU, internal comms? I'll come back to you, Laura.
At Lifetime, it is. We are always changing. Our CEO says, quite frankly, you adapt or you die, and that's a little stark, but it really is the reality of the world that we live in now. And the world around us is changing at an unprecedented rate, and companies have to innovate, and they have to adapt, and they have to strategize differently to keep up. And we, as communicators, have to do the same. So, figuring out how to make sure that employees know what's happening as far in advance as possible, and that they can feel prepared, that they feel supported through change, and that they know where they can go with questions to share feedback, acknowledging that change is a reality, but it doesn't have to be scary and it doesn't have to cause fatigue if we can set them up for success with the proper strategy.
Nice. And Jason, is that your experience as well?
Absolutely it is. I can remember a time back when change was more like a project. Like, hey, we're going to start changing on this day, and then we're going to do some change, and then we'll be done. Ta-da! Change is done. But no, that's not how it is now. I mean, it's not even how the universe works. It's constant and expanding all the time, and so is change and progress and our reaction to all of those things. I think the key to making sure that employees kind of don't have to deal with the fatigue and the anxiety, quite frankly, that comes from all of those things, is, like I said on the first question, is involving them in that. Otherwise, they feel like change is happening to them versus by and for and through them. And so when they're involved, then it's not as scary. Now it's the team working on things. They're getting to make decisions that make sense for how they do work in the organization. So I think, we certainly can't stop it, probably don't want to stop it. But the way to make it, I think, feel better is to make sure employees are helping to lead that rather than being on the whip end of it all the time.
And what about for you, Paddy, at Screen Cloud?
Yeah, so we talk a lot about the push versus pull. When, like to your point, how much of it needs to just be pushed out in emails and urgent notifications, and how much of it is a pull? When is the employee ready for it? They may have had an announcement, but give them the chance to pull it in, to read that note when they're ready, and kind of working with them through that. So we see a lot of those kinds of use cases, and then that's when you start to get better feedback and write the drip feeding campaigns, not all at once. So that balance between the two is really interesting.
And so if we kind of accept that we're in this kind of constant change era, it's no longer a project or something that begins or ends on a certain day, there's kind of like a trade-off, which is that we need to communicate at pace because there's a lot happening, but also in the same time we're in like an era of content quality. So how do we balance this, like getting messages out fast versus taking this approach which is maybe considerate and fine-tuning the messaging? Laura, would you want to take this one?
Sure. We talk all the time about whether we're managing to the deadline or whether we're managing to the objective. And at times, the deadline is the most important thing. We all have earnings releases, or benefits open enrollment is coming, or annual learning, which is the best part of the year. There are things that always come at a certain time, and there's a time sensitivity to it. But in most cases, it's something that we can plan for with stakeholders. And sometimes I'm sure everyone in this room has felt that, where you are managing to someone else wanting to check off a list, or you're even a self-imposed deadline on something versus thinking about what's best for us, it's for our team members, and really having conversations around what their capacity is to be able to take in that information, to consume it, to sit with it, and then to be able to take action on it. And oftentimes, if we can give them the space and the pace to be able to do that, change feels a little bit more manageable.
Yeah, and so you kind of, thinking about the manageability of change, one of the things that seems to be coming out in the data is to do with change fatigue, specifically that, we understand, a lot of organizations understand we need to change, transform, but actually when you think of it from the employee level, they're sometimes saying, we're at capacity here, we're change fatigue, and so that may be the case, but we're also at an all-time need for this communication. I'm sure a lot of communicators in the room will navigate that will try and resonate with that challenge, but how do you try and navigate that challenge as a communicator, Jason?
I like to think of internal communications as kind of in two buckets. There's the big C communications, which is primarily what all of us do in our daily jobs. And then there's the little c communications, which is what everyone else is doing other than us. And in most organizations, the big C is about 10% and little c is probably 90%, give or take here or there. And what I've seen is most organizations just over-index on the big C stuff. Oh, here's another CEO, here's a bunch of emails, here's videos, here's town halls, and all that stuff, and which is great. That's great. But it doesn't need to be more than 10% of what you're doing, and the other 90% needs to be all of your leaders and managers and frontline supervisors having conversations, and not doing presentations, but having conversations directly with their teams to understand what they understand, to understand what their questions are, to understand how they can make things more clear, or also some challenges and some pushback that maybe, you know, the leaders who've decided these things maybe haven't even considered. So to me, it's a mix of those things. And it just goes back to what I said earlier. It's just the more you involve your employees, I think, the more likely we are to be successful without scaring everybody in the process.
Okay, so I want to pivot to kind of thinking about the function of internal comms. You mentioned big C, little c comms. Let's have a think about big C comms. Because I feel like since I've worked in this industry, there's always been this kind of pursuit of a seat at the table. And that conversation hasn't got away. I'm sure some people have got that coveted seat. But generally speaking, it doesn't feel like there's a whole massive change. What do we think is preventing people getting that seat at the table? Laura, do you want to take this?
Sure. I think the table is really just a metaphor for influence, and I think we're all chasing influence because having the ability to influence brings power, and with power comes great responsibility. And as internal communicators, we're uniquely positioned to advocate for the employees in a way that maybe others in the room might not be able to. And in my role, I have found that the best way for me to build influence is to be able to help our corporate partners and our stakeholders understand who our team members are. They are 16-year-old swim instructors. We have 80-year-old personal trainers. We have everybody in between, different generational gaps, different technology competencies, and being able to help them really understand where those team members are and how to reach them where they are with the messages that they need and want versus simply what we think they need and what we think they want is really where that cross-section helps us deliver as much value and to have as much influence as we can.
Excellent. And Paddy, what do you think is preventing people getting that say or influence?
Yeah, I mean, there's like kind of a bit of the black and white answers, your data points, your metrics, your email click rates, these kinds of things. But when we kind of talk to our customers about this as well, we often find that you'll have, your champions, your daily users of the platforms. But when you start to kind of talk to a wider group and you ask them, okay, so what is your company goal for engagement with this platform? Many of them won't know, right? So if your team doesn't know, your other users don't know, how will you be reporting this upwards and be measured against it? So we always kind of talk about, your champions, enable them as much as you can, because that will feed up. That will give you, to your point, that influence, the insights that you can get. So that's one of the key things we find.
And so you started to mention data and analytics skill sets, and in Jenny and the beta session yesterday, they spoke a little bit about what we need to kind of build credibility in internal communications. What do we think will be the new skills and competencies that internal communicators will need in the next 2, 3, 4 years? If you can get your crystal ball out. Jason, I'll come to you first on this.
Okay. I think brand equals experience squared. So it's the combination of the customer experience and the employee experience. And together, those define the company/brand. I think the skills and competencies that anybody working in comms or marketing or advertising, whatever the name is we want to call things, is understanding who the audiences are and the data that's around that. And so, for example, in the marketing world, if you ask about who the customer is, oh, she's 33, she drives a blue Volvo, she has 2.5 cats, 2.5 cats. They know all that stuff. And then when we want to go and find out the same kind of thing about our own employees, hey, tell us about our employees. We pay them twice a week. Sometimes direct deposit. They sign up for benefits sometimes. Like, where's that? There's all that. That data exists in the HRIS system for sure. But we don't think about our employees the same way that we think about our customers, and there's absolutely no reason why we can't or shouldn't. And so to me, the skill set that's going to be important is realizing that, evangelizing around that, and making sure that anything you're doing for internal comms, employee communications, and culture are tied to the only three things that your senior leaders care about: driving revenue, controlling costs, and mitigating risk. And that's it. Every decision made by every leader in every company is about those three things. So when you are trying to get stuff, get rid of stuff, be bigger, be more targeted, whatever it is you're trying to do, it all has to be tied to those three things. And that is not a skill that we are naturally good at, right? But that doesn't mean we can't be good at it. The only reason none of you have won Wimbledon is because you haven't tried, right? Right? Same thing here. The only reason we're not very good at this stuff is because we've never tried. So I think that's the biggest skill we're going to need is courage and curiosity and the willing to be able to try some new and different things.
Excellent. And Paddy, what skills, competencies would you say that an internal communicator needs to equip themselves with for the next couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, again, right, we can talk about data, and there's a lot of AI, like, do we need to be upskilled and using AI, but one of the things that I really hope is that we don't lose some of the skills we already have. Like, you guys are really a voice to the employees as well, so that personable, that trust that you're creating, like, as we all upskill and do new things, I think it's really important to think about what we're not going to lose, and that voice, and again, like some of the things you were talking about there at the end. So yeah, don't forget what you've already have. It's not just always about upskilling and leveraging the skills you already have.
Laura, anything to add?
I think business acumen has always been important, but being able to speak the language of the business to the people who are making the business decisions, not even just in demonstrating competency and knowing that you understand their world, but being able to put the value of quality comms into business impact for them. So it's one thing to say, we should send this because everybody needs to know it. It's another thing to say, if we send this to the right people at the right time, in the right channel, this will lead to a 50% increase in sales on this particular product. All of a sudden, you have people leaning in because that is the language that matters to them, and that's their currency, and it all comes down to Jason's point, the bottom line, P&Ls, ROI, and being able to speak that language clearly and be able to connect the dots and how comms can help deliver that is certainly a skill that will be necessary.
So we've spoken, I guess the value add of that is to be able to work better with leaders, get that influence, get that seat at the table. Leadership came up in Vanessa's session this morning, specifically to do with the changing kind of leadership communication styles and the kind of expectation of authenticity in a lot of that. How do we think that will play out over the next couple of years? Because there's kind of like a juxtaposition between leadership authenticity, but at the same time, we've got AI as well that's been spoken about. So how do we think people manage that sort of, or navigate that sort of challenge? Laura, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, transparency and authenticity are always going to be the bread and butter of any leader communication. I also think it's really important for employees nowadays to see their senior leaders as human beings. The emergence of things like an Ask Me Anything, it just adds some raw realness and some humanity to those messages, and that helps build credibility and trust. And I think being able to understand that as much as, maybe at one point the very dry, buttoned up key messages and talking point video for 7 minutes may have been the effective communication method. We live in the generation of TikTok and social media and buzzy, short videos that are to the point. But being able to feel the ethos of a leader and feel trust in the person that's making the decisions for us as employees is huge. So being able to think about that and think about the audience and being able to speak to what they need to hear and what they want to hear about, regardless of whether they work at corporate or whether they're folding towels at a towel desk, is going to be incredibly important.
Excellent. And Paddy, what are your thoughts on kind of navigating this change in leadership communication? Actually, I know at ScreenCloud you have super authentic leadership communications, and there's kind of that external element there as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of we'll talk about this a bit more in detail, but for us, it's really what we drive is the mix of local content plus your corporate communications, the big C's, and how you're driving that. And what we always talk about as well is you guys need to have the right infrastructure in place to be able to then focus on the right content, the messaging, the tone. So we can think about the world's greatest campaign, but if I need to then spend 6 months building out the tools to be able to deploy it, it's not really a successful campaign. So it's really important, do the front work, leverage the tools you have, and then you can focus again on that tone and thinking about the personas as well, who your employees are.
And Jason?
Well, as usual, contrarian here. It's my firm belief that leadership communication is not going to get any better until the leaders themselves understand that communication is a leadership responsibility and not a department down the hall. And if we keep doing that for them, it's fine if we do it with them. We can help them be better. We want them to be better. And we're good at helping them be better, but we can't keep doing it for them. That's their job. That's part of your job as a leader. Channels in, we can do all these things, but you have to do that. That's what leaders do. And until that realization, it feels like it'll be 30-30 before we get to that point, to me at least.
Okay, so I've got a couple more questions for you guys. I just want to give a quick call out to the audience. We'll be also doing the audience Q&A. So I love to shape this specific panel around what's top of mind for you guys. So feel free to get your phones out, start contributing questions. But before we do that, let's shift gears and talk a little bit about technology, specifically measurement. I feel like as an industry, as communicators, in the last few years, we've united around data and analytics, and this came up in Kim's session yesterday. I think we've worked pretty hard at trying to overcome this perception of the fact that we can't work with data. But that's my perception. Where do we feel like we are in the profession when it comes to data, and what do we need to be focused on now to get even better? Laura, do you want to kick us off?
I mean, I'm of the belief that data without context and connection to business objectives doesn't mean a whole lot. You could say, we had 90% of people open this email, and then leaders say, great, did we see any conversions? Well, no, but 90% of people saw the message. And so being able to think about data in a different way and getting away from, checking the box on open rates, click rates, things like that, it really is being able to make the connection, and sometimes you have to get creative, and maybe that's pulse surveys to ask employees if something was useful, if they understood the basis of the message. It's figuring out a way to track whatever the action item is that you ask them to do. If it doesn't lead to behavior change or an impact on the business, it's basically numbers on a page.
Yeah, okay. And Patty?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I think it also depends what data you're looking at. So for us, we work a lot with frontline communications. And so for that use case, health and safety metrics are your drivers, are your ROI metrics for leadership as well, right? So that's a very different way. And so we tend to think of like the traditional comms data metrics, but expanding the horizon, think about what for that site, for that team is really relevant. What do they need to be communicated about? So understanding that. And then, yeah, like the example of we have QR codes you can scan. So we'll look at, okay, how many people scanned on the screen this content? Did they engage with it? Yes or no? But we were doing some testing, and it was like, oh, we saw a massive spike, and this is great. And they were like, well, yeah, but that was because it was linked to the lunch menu and the new special we're going to post. So like really understanding the anecdotes and why are people engaging with it. But that's really useful information, because then for the next one, we're actually going to do a change announcement, potentially link it with the lunch announcement as well. Like those are the ways that we think about the data and driving those key metrics.
Excellent. And Jason?
Yeah, I think, like Laura was saying, like, data's wonderful and also worthless, Like, we've gotten really good lately about being able to collect data and look at data and being able to pick, like, a needle out of a haystack. Okay, that is real progress. There's been a long time where we weren't even able to do the most basic of things. But now the challenge is we got to pull a needle out of a stack of needles, right? Which one is the exact right one, and what does it mean, and how can we use that to our advantage? And I think it's context and relevance and, being connected to whatever the business drivers are. Because we think, oh, they're the leaders, they know about all this stuff. We don't have to explain it to them. They don't know any more about what we do than we know about CEOing the company, right? So we have to constantly educate them and help them understand and put those things in context. Otherwise, if we don't do the math for them, they're going to do their own math, and it might not be the math we want.
And okay, so on the topic of technology still, I feel like whereas customer experience and a lot of other parts of the organization, whether it be marketing or finance, that digitalization happened over a long period of time. And I think we as an industry have had a big bit to catch up to that. And a lot of that digitalization has happened in the last, let's say, 3 to 5 years. Of course, there was some before that, but kind of the good stuff only started coming recently. I'm a bit biased, but but at the pace of technology change that we have had as an industry, where else is there to go to improve internal comms and employee experience? Paddy, do you want to kick us off?
So that's a big one. Yeah, I think it's about just, again, leveraging the tools that you have. We spend a lot of time also thinking about who you're trying to engage and learning about, like, we have the example of, people say, go to the notice board, you'll find the latest information there. Like, a young generation won't know what the notice board is. Like, that is, and they shouldn't. Why are you still printing paper? It's bad for the environment. Like, so adopting to those new trends, those things that are happening, I think is really important.
Yeah.
Excellent. And Jason?
Yeah, my first day at work in 1989, they taught me how to print out a memo and put it in an inner office envelope and stick it in the little mail basket by the elevator, and then magically it gets to somebody on the other floor who will then reply the same way, and then 2 or 3 days later you'll go, oh, he said no. So I don't have any idea. I mean, think about how things are totally different now compared to that. So I don't really have any idea about what the future of technology and all that's going to be, but what I do know is that whatever the high-tech platforms are that we need to be using and will be using, and everybody will love and they'll be wonderful, cannot skip over the fact that they are all in service to delivering a high-touch experience. We can't just substitute everything to be digital without having anything emotional and rational and personal. Yes, there's a whole lot of things we can do with that, and thank goodness I couldn't get through the day without all of those things. But that is not a substitute for making sure that employees understand and literally feel what you need them to feel about your culture and your relationship with them as leaders and the value that they bring to the organization. And I don't know of any digital tools yet that can give somebody a hug, but that to me, that's what we have to keep focused on. Yes, we need all this stuff going on, including artificial intelligence. But you know what? There's still room for actual intelligence and what we can do to have things feel more human. Yeah. I don't care what year it is and what fancy thing we're using.
Well, for me, it was very telling that even Microsoft yesterday spoke about that it's adding the human element in, and for them to be able to kind of like authentically present that, I was like, it's so great to hear that from a corporation like Microsoft. Finally, I'll come to you on this tech question, Laura. Where else do you think we've got to go, if anywhere?
I think we have to go toward a seamless experience that is simple, that is faster and easier than analog for employees. They don't care if they're in ServiceNow or Workday or whatever the tool is. They want to print their payslip. They want to be able to change their password. They want to be able to access the information they need. And so being able to layer all of those tools, because the tools are great, but if the tools were integrated and it was one-stop shop for employees to use one search function to get whatever they need, and it isn't a version from 2007, it is the most current, it is the definitive answer, and we heard this yesterday. If it's not easier than analog, we're not going to be able to get sustained adoption, and it's not a value add, and it certainly won't drive efficiency.
Excellent. So my final question before I head to audience Q&A, which I'm really excited about, can you give us one specific prediction about internal communication in 2030 that might sound impossible today, but you believe will happen? Who wants to kick us off? Let's go with Paddy.
Great.
Tag, you're in.
Yeah. I mean, I did have this one kind of platform idea in my head. I think that's my pre-written answer. I think kind of taking everything that we've heard the last couple of days, it's not just having that one platform, but then if we're bringing it all together, how do we, like, what else are we opening up? So when we're thinking about AI and all the great things Indy's going to do, what are you going to do with that free time now? That's the question, right? You're not going to have, back to like the first points, like you're not going to then go on a vacation and say, great, this is it. So hopefully by then it's a smoother operation. It is much more linked to the initiatives that you were talking about, right? The marketing and the other departments that are impacted by this. So I hope that it just, again, becomes a smoother, more impactful. Like we are just scratching the surface of what we're doing. That's my hope and my vision for the community.
Excellent. Jason, bold prediction.
2030, right?
Yeah. Ish.
Ish. All right, I'll take the ish part. What I
Give or
hope
take.
happens is that in 2030, somebody's asking one of you, hey, tell me about your career. And you say, oh, I was doing internal communications. What is that? Like, oh, well, back then, we used to have all these platforms and channels, and we did all these communications, mostly on behalf of leaders. But now that leaders are doing all those things, we've been freed from that to help them be better leaders, to help them be better communicators, to help our employees understand what we're doing and why. And so, yes, we don't do the same things that we used to do, but what we do now is even more valuable to anybody that we're trying to, pull along with us. And so I don't want the whole industry to go away, but I would like for it to evolve to the point where we're all seen as the strategic advisors that we know we are.
I saw an interesting LinkedIn post about that, and that's quite a controversial take, but actually, like, when you think about your objectives as a communicator, it's to eliminate some of those communication barriers, so it totally makes sense. Laura, would like to finish us off with the bold prediction?
Yeah, I think everything pendulum swings where we are swinging rapidly toward technology right now, but I think within the next 5 or 10 years, we're going to come back to really wanting the human element of communication. And the tools are great, and being able to deliver things through the palm of somebody's hand and their phone is awesome. But I think we are going to see those mid-level leaders, the middle managers, become one of, if not the most important communication channel that maybe we're not tapping right now. Because, I mean, at a company of 50,000 people, my mighty team of 2 cannot possibly personalize and customize messages for every team. But a leader of 10 to 12 people can.
Right.
And so our role, I think, will evolve, to Jason's point, into how do we help coach up those leaders and upskill leaders to be communicators when they're emerging leaders and they're just getting into role, versus when they've been in the role for 30 years and their communication style is their communication style, but getting to that essential cross-section of becoming a leader and still being malleable to be able to guide and coach someone on teaching them to fish, as it were, of how do we help leaders better effectively communicate with their teams.
Yeah, and I start to see definitely the pockets of that starting to happen as well. Okay, so I mentioned LinkedIn as if by magic, Joanna Parsons' name has popped up on my iPad. That is the current top voted question. Hi, Joanna. So what's a piece of advice that you'd give to your past self early in your career? Jason?
I would think it would be to have courage. I think there's a lot of times when we know what to say, we know what to do, and for whatever reason, we're just like, I can't go down there and say that. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. And in fact, they need you to, because there are a lot of other people around them who are not telling them things that they need to hear, whether they want to hear them or not. So it's hard to do, particularly earlier on, and sometimes, like last week, for me, it's just hard to do, but it makes a difference. And when you demonstrate courage, then you are also giving other people the ability to be courageous as well. So if I had learned that earlier on, I might be doing this call from my boat.
Paddy?
Yeah, I think it's a bit linked to this, but for me, the best things I've ever done were being like cross-functional, interdisciplinary. So going beyond your comfort zone of like, oh, maybe I know comms, I like comms, I can do something. Maybe marketing is linked, but it's like actually engineering and some of these new things. And with AI, be curious. I think that's the best things you can do, because that will impact, you'll take that back to your teams, the middle managers, like really push yourself to go beyond the normal things you're doing, your 9 to 5.
Nice. And Laura?
I would say ask the hard questions. Sometimes we sit in rooms and we don't want to, I mean, I've never been worried about. I've been curious since I was about 4 years old. So curiosity is check the box, but asking the difficult questions that maybe everybody's thinking in the room, but nobody's asking. And sometimes asking a bold question leads down a conversation that wouldn't have happened, but is an essential conversation. So asking the questions that either may not be popular or may not be the ones that everybody else is thinking about, but it could lead to some very interesting discussions.
I know Joanna would love that answer. So on to the next question. We've spoken a little bit about personalization. It's come up in a few different questions. So when it comes to messaging and personalized messaging, how personal do we get? By function, by work type, by generation even? Any thoughts, feelings on that? Paddy, what do you think?
Yeah, as personal as you can, right? So this is where Screens is a really good tool for local content, for having people upload things instantly that can be spread just within their facility, but also across your company, right? I think this is really one of the key drivers that we're seeing, especially the younger generation. They expect personalized communications. They really do. If it's not, they're not going to read it. So yeah, I think you can't personalize it enough.
Excellent. And Jason, do you want to chime in on that as well?
Well, I think it should be as personal as the employees want it to be. Like, there's all kinds of ways, particularly learning from the marketing and customer side, for us to be like super personal. But sometimes that just feels kind of icky. And so that balance between dear employee and dear Jason somewhere is the right thing. And I think employees should be able to decide that with current platforms, certainly future ones.
Yeah, you've got kind of the kind of like cultural context is relevant, because I feel like those emails which are like Kaz, comma, like used to really get my attention. Now it makes me switch off because there are so many of them.
Yes.
So it's like trying to understand like what's relevant at that time, and that's kind of where that marketing mindset comes in.
Yeah.
Moving on to our next question. Any advice on making important but rote internal communications more authentic? Laura?
I think we are in the age of conversational dialogue, and I think talking to people like they're human beings. I mean, we don't have to get into, the catchphrases and the hashtags and things like that they might see on social, but I think if we're all not on a mission to remove corporate jargon, I think we're doing it wrong. So being able to use words that are how people speak to each other, being able to explain complex things in the simplest and clearest language possible, that to me should be the norm if it isn't already.
Excellent. And Jason, any thoughts?
I think, when we think about brands that we like, brought to you. When we think about brands that we like, that's an emotional connection that we have, right? Right? Do we have truly an emotional connection at work? Why not? Why can't we? Like, why can't we build that same sort of emotional connection instead of a rational one as a way to strengthen, all those relationships and the culture and things like that? And I think a lot of that, you see it, world leaders who are campaigning to stay the world leader or become the world leader, they go down to the diner and have coffee, and there might be 20 people sitting in there. They're not going to win the election because they talk to those 20 people, but they're going to win the election because those 20 people talk to 20 more, and the next thing you know, that 15-minute coffee stop impacts 50,000 people in that community. So it all starts, I think, with that's the most personal you can get, is having a conversation with someone.
Yeah.
And having that be authentic and real.
And Paddy?
Yeah, I think mixing in also the local things, it's a bit linked to personal, but yeah, driving it and leaning on the people that you have on site. So what works, what resonates with the people here, driving that. And we'll also have examples of customers that are, using something happened yesterday, we'll put it on screen tomorrow. Embed it so that it also shows that it's a live communication that you're doing, that you're not just scheduling newsletters and Slack messages and other things. Use what's happening at your local sites to drive the communications.
And this is actually another question that I have for you, Paddy. Hopefully he doesn't mind me asking, but you've got one of the lucky CEOs that is super easy going on LinkedIn and sorting his own communications out, and I'm sure a lot of people wish they had that, or maybe not sometimes, but hopefully he doesn't mind me asking you this, but how How did Mark get to a place where he was like super happy, communicating super authentically, quickly, all the time?
He'd probably be better positioned to answer it, but it is generally, if anyone, I'll give Mark the shout out. So Mark McDermott on LinkedIn, he's our CEO. He does a digital signage fail of the week every Friday, and they are crowdsourced images, and he'll give credit to whoever. And so it's just, I think, again, to that like honest, personal touch. He'll call out things. He'll take risks. He'll say, like, this might be an unpopular opinion, but we are pushing ScreenCloud to be not just an AI product, but an AI company, and that is what he's announced internally and externally. So also mirroring what you're doing. He's always going to be open to it. You can ask him questions. So I think you got to be willing to take risks, sometimes unpopular opinions, but anywhere we go, usually someone will know Mark's LinkedIn. So it is working. Yeah, it's definitely a good tool he's using.
Excellent. And a question for you, Laura, also from Joanna. What do you think is the most important... I was just checking, it's a good question. What do you think is the most important skill that internal communicators need going into 2026?
Hi, Joanna. I think curiosity and that is, I heard recently that it doesn't necessarily give you a lot of clout to have all the answers, but being the person in the room that asks the best questions sometimes can create more influence. So asking why and what if and what's possible. I think, not thinking so much. We have a phrase at Lifetime where we talk about it as the yes and. So it's not a, no, we can't do that because of this. It's yes, and here's how we can do that. So being able to be flexible while being curious, I think that's sort of maybe a little bit of a mashup. But the adaptability and the curiosity to go into any situation and know that you can get to yes somehow is probably what I would say.
You just did a yes and then, actually.
You got it.
And also, any theatre kids will remember that because that's kind of how you improv. Also, I think that the point around like the curiosity that's really interesting for me is that you can exchange information in the meeting, but if you don't ask the right questions, you might get the wrong outcome. And so, like, it's so crucial to like actually getting the objective and the outcome that you want is ensuring that everything is elicited that you need for it to be.
Right.
Another question from Heather, one of our social winners as well. We've talked a lot about how important it is to tie your goals back to revenue, cost control, and mitigating risk. But what about employee experience? What tips do you have for comms professionals who are looking to enhance and drive company culture? A purist comms question. Jason.
I think you can tie employee experience and culture to probably one of those three business drivers that we talked about: turnover, satisfaction, engagement, things like that. I think the other way is more sort of mix of qualitative and quantitative kind of focus groups and conversations, not literally people in a room in a focus group, but just asking people, what do you tell people about where you work? Just, is it good? Is it bad? Do you like it? Do they want to work here as a result of that? Like, let's find out what people feel about those things, match that up with what our customers say about their relationship with us, and we know a dollar value attached to that automatically. Same dollar value is attached over here, but we don't know what those things are because we're not asking it in that way. There's tons of people who are super proud of working wherever it is they work, despite whatever might be going on there. And they really want to stay, and they really want to make it better. So who better to help you do those things in a way that you can then measure and show the exact dollar value? And then we don't have to keep begging for money all the time because we're generating profits and we're controlling costs and we're mitigating risk in the same way the rest of the organization is doing, measured the exact same way.
And I guess one of the things that, especially when it comes to cost control or revenue or risk, comes back down to ultimately people behavior change. Yeah. And so how can internal communicators tackle problems that require kind of gnarly behavior change? Laura?
I think you have to lead with what's in it for them. There's a value prop for everybody, and if you're asking somebody to do something, to feel something, to change a behavior, you have to lead with why they should care. And also there's the impact of if they don't, that is somewhat important, but for the employee, it's very much why should I do this and what do I get out of it? And if you can't make a strong business case, it's going to be very difficult to get behavior change to stick.
Excellent. Everyone, thank you so much. Please give a round of applause for our panel.
Thank y'all. Thank you. Thanks.
So I think we have a break. I'm not actually sure, but it's our final call for the social competition. We'll announce the winner at the end of the conference. And yeah, please do get involved. Especially, there were loads of great insights across that panel there, and lots of great questions as well. Sorry, we didn't get to all of them. It was probably one of the most questions we've had in one of the sessions. So yeah, congrats for fielding some of them. Come back in 15 minutes, join me on this stage for Shell's session of a cultural reset, or check out what else is going on in the conference. So thanks, see you in a bit.
Great.
Good bottle.